What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at Better Call Saul Season 4, and once again, Better Call Saul hits it out of the park with another excellent season. I thought Season 4, Better Call Saul, was outstanding. So, Better Call Saul deals with the fallout of Chuck's death at the end of Season 3, and we see how that affects everyone all throughout this season. We see how it affects Jimmy, we see how it affects Kim, we see how it affects Howard Hamlin. And his death pretty much just makes it pretty much everyone handles it completely differently. No, when it comes to Howard, Howard has this intense guilt that the death was caused by him since he pushed Chuck out, since he was trying to push Chuck out of HHM. Jimmy, Kim grieves for Chuck. Is very saddened by Chuck because of what Chuck and Jimmy were going through in seasons 1 through 3. And Jimmy, on the other hand, we really can't get a grip as to how Jimmy really feels about the death of Chuck, but it's the death of Chuck that further catapults Jimmy into furthering his transformation into Saul Goodman, the criminal lawyer. And when it comes to Jimmy getting into the criminal underworld, season 4 sets up those pieces. So Jimmy is pretty much now on a 1 year suspension from being a lawyer. So he's picking up a couple of jobs here and there until he lands a spot at a telephone store called CC Mobile, and he pretty much starts to sell prepaid prepaid phones off the clock, pretty much making himself a little bit of a profit. But he's selling them to the criminals pretty much. So that way, when Jimmy gets reinstated, he's gonna have a nice clientele waiting for him. So season 4 sees Jimmy taking those steps into putting his toes into the criminal underworld. At the same time where he's dealing with Chuck's death, he's also getting the pieces ready for when he makes his return as a lawyer. And all throughout this season, Bob Odenkirk's performance was outstanding. Once again, he hits it out of the park. I think Better Call Saul, when you compare it to the other seasons, season 4 has a much more darker tone to it, so to speak. Like it's a much more darker tone. It takes more darker tones. You still have that humor, but it has a more darker storyline to it. Is what I'm trying to get at. You know, a lot of important elements pretty much take form in season 4. We see Jimmy's further transformation into what will become Saul Goodman with the telephones. We see the his relationship with himself and Kim start to really start to deteriorate and splinter off. We see we see what goes on with Gus. Gus's whole thing in season 4 is pretty much the construction of the super lab. He hires an outside crew from Germany to construct the super lab. We get a return from Gale this season, which is always nice. And of course, season 4, we also see Mike and Gus. We see the beginnings of their relationship. We see that Gus trusts Mike. Gus makes Mike head of security for Matt Agro, in name only, of course, but Mike takes that job very, very seriously, to the point where Gus takes on Mike more permanently, and Mike is pretty much in charge of this crew, and he forms a friendship with this guy called Vonner Ziegler, and I like the relationship between Warner and Mike. It's a really good friendship and bond they develop, and when Mike has to kill Warner at the end of the season because Warner pretty much disappeared from the construction of the super lab, pretty much endangering everyone by his leaving, because who knows if this guy will spill the beans before it's really going on. And we see the conflict Mike comes to by having to kill this man, because he and Warner, they formed a friendship, and and we can tell that Mike feels that what Warner did, yes, it was stupid, but he shouldn't have to die for it. But at the end of the day, Gus is a ruthless man who does not want no loose ends, and he will kill you for the most minorest of minor things for fear that it could jeopardize what he's doing. And I thought it was handled beautifully. I love Jonathan Banks' performance all throughout this season. I thought he was fantastic, especially with him and Warner. I thought the relationship between those two was handled fairly well. Loved it a lot. I love the stuff with Nacho in this season. Pretty much, Nacho ends up becoming an informant for Gus, as Gus knows what Nacho did to Hector. So as blackmail, Gus is pretty much forcing Nacho to work with him. And of course, we see Hector. He is now completely disabled. He's got the wheelchair. And this season also introduces us to Lau Salamanca. And it's actually Lau Salamanca who gives Hector the infamous bell. But on before that, Lau is now taking control of what Hector is doing as pretty much the Don, so to speak. Pretty much keeping an eye on the family business, keeping an eye on Nacho and how he's running things. Well, all that handled really, really well. The season perfectly sets up Lau and what he's going to be doing with season 5, which I can't wait for, by the way. And I like Tony Dalton as Lau. I like the Lau character. He's got like this very just manic sort of charisma to him, and I think Dalton really brings the character alive in the 3 episodes that he was in. Because Lau comes in like the last 3 episodes of the show, and to me, Tony Dalton makes a big splash. He brings like this manic. He brings like an energy to the character. He brings like a menacing quality to this character, and I can't wait to see what exactly he really brings to Lau when season 5 comes to town. Because what I saw with season 4, very intrigued. And also, if you remember, it's hinted at in a Breaking Bad episode that Saul came into contact with a guy called Lau. Could this be the guy that he was referring to? We'll have to wait and see till season 4, till season 5. I also want to see how they wrap up Nacho's character as well. Now that he's entangled with Gus and is pretty much now a middleman between the Salamancas and Gus. Very interested to see how that develops. Yeah, there's so much more to talk about with season 4, but those are just my broad strokes with season 4. Overall, this is a perfect 10 season. I loved it. It's great. It sets up season 5 perfectly. And Jimmy's transformation into Saul Goodman is coming very, 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 very close. Because at the end of this season, when the bar reinstates him, he pretty much says that he's going to be not practicing under the name McGill. So we all know what game he's going to be practicing under. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Better Call Saul Season 4. If you like this season, let me know in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe. And remember, it's all good, man.